But yes, I missed him. There had always been a hollowness, an emptiness I could never reveal. I think I worked on auto drive those months, manically running from my own intrusive thoughts and getting nowhere, but skirting round all that repressed loss and hurt. Yes, inevitably, as it seems now, it was on one of those drunken nights at the Unity Theatre bar. I was loitering at the end of the bar as usual, pretty much oblivious to what was happening around me. I felt this jab in the back. Nothing really. It hardly merited a response. But for whatever reason, I spun round, and there he was. I was standing face to face with John. "Hi," he said, with that smile of his which made me melt there and then. God, my head was spinning, my heart was beating something awful. For a split second, I didn't know whether to lunge at him or do a runner. The tension was almost visible in the gap between us, left to indicate that we weren't yet comfortable enough to touch. I had my back to the pillar with one foot in the wall now, my knees jutting out, allowing just enough space for John to stand in. We stared at one another, put our drinks down, and without even speaking, embraced. We kissed and hugged both passionately and tenderly, and we seemed to move in unison, intertwined, as though we still knew each other's every gesture, and the knowledge that the flame, which now appeared to be rekindled, had never been put out. I remember waking the next morning, arm in arm, and we kissed tenderly, yet already less assuredly. There was things to deal with, things to sort out. "I'm glad you came back," I said. "What happens now?" John asked. "We try to be more understanding. We try again. We tried to be serious, but the happiness of the moment shone through. And even when I said I couldn't move back, John agreed. I made coffee, and we spent the rest of the day in bed in a kaleidoscope of ecstatic highs and pure emotions. By tea time, we were starved and exhausted. I moved back in with John the following week. It was wonderful at first, and got more exciting thereafter. One evening, when John was cooking, he muttered something that would change everything. "I knew we'd get back together," he said. "It was just a matter of when." I think I said that was a bit presumptuous, although rather half-heartedly. And as he said, "No, not when you know." And it was then that he asked, "Well, is it true what I've heard?" "What's that?" I said. "That you've gotten involved with those crazies from the SLM. I laughed at that. "Keeping tabs?" "Of course." He finished what he was doing at the cooker and came over, sitting himself next to me, took my hand and kissed it. "Well?" What did I say? "Yeah." "I'm glad you brought it up. I owe you an apology. More than one, really. But, well, I think I just got involved because of Alistair. Because of you, actually. I knew you'd had a crush on him and thought, perversely, that if I hung around with him, I could... Well, I suppose I was trying to make you jealous. Sorry. No more. It's done." John shrugged his shoulder and smiled softly. "No. Why should it be done? It was only there because of you. I don't need it anymore." John moved his head slowly. He looked in my direction, and his eyes pierced me. "No," he said. "Let's finish what you started." I'd phoned Alistair, and we met up the following evening. We huddled into a booth at the far end of the Penny Black, and whispered and discussed and argued, and it wasn't until then that I realised how much of a dream, how much of a fantasy the whole thing had really been. John's practical insistence seemed to reveal all the flaws and highlight the true nature of the meetings. It had all been a game, an illusion, lacking in any real intention. By now, John had become obsessed, as I had previously been. He drove off those who couldn't be swept along in his urgency. All but Alistair, myself and Karen, who until then had been the quietest of the group, as the reality of John's intentions sunk in. Oh, it was easy enough. I'm surprised now to think just how easy. We had driven down to London the day before and visited Westminster Abbey to get the feel of the place. We were all surprised at how empty the place was. No people, priests, guards, wardens, nothing. Hard to believe now, I know, but not so much then. We returned the following day and quite simply removed the stone from where it sat and drove back to Scotland. It wouldn't take long for them to realise it had gone, and so John had arranged for us to take it to a friend, a stonemason's. A man who had acquired a stone of similar properties that could be dated from the same period. I still find it quite staggering now. The man chiselled the stone until you couldn't tell the two apart. We buried the original, or at least John buried it. Only he knew where the original Stone of Scone lay. We were caught, of course, and the replica was taken back to Westminster. And it's sat there since. John was a bit depressed to start with, and I was confused and somehow felt guilty. But things calmed down. After our release, though, John became ill. Not straight away, but gradually, over the next few years. Years of being up and down, and then the big depression came. It must have been during that time that he first thought of it. Dying, that is. Well, taking his own life. So he asked if I'd help him, and I did. And that's how I came to be with him at the end. I got myself a coffee, grabbed the paper and settled in the orange room of the Blue Moon, just by the window. And there he was again, John, across the road and standing outside Just Junk. I saw him then for the last time. I just finished reading the article in The Guardian, and my heart was jumping. It was an article in the Stone of Scone's return to Scotland, in all its failed pomp and lack of ceremony. As I read the article, I now understood why John had returned. Session 3. The article? Yeah, I've got it here. Which Stone of Scone? So, the Stone of Scone has returned to Scotland once more. After 700 years, we are to welcome back part of our heritage, and the main parties can get on with the business of electioneering. In one gesture, the Prime Minister, John Major, has ensured that the Scottish question and devolution will no longer plague the mind of the Scottish people. The real question on everyone's lips north of the border should now be, which stone are we embracing back into the fold? According to legend, the stone served as a pillow of Jacob, the Holy Lands, when he had his dream of the angel of Genesis in Genesis 28:10-22. It was reputedly taken to Ireland by the Eastern Princess Tai when she married the Irish king. Fergus, the Prince of Darriada, then transferred it to Iona, from where it was later removed to Scone by Kenneth. It wasn't until 1296 that the victorious Edward I took it to Westminster and built it into the throne used for the English coronation. However, many believe that the Stone of Destiny, as it is known, which Edward I took as his possession, was in fact a substitute. And moreover, that this substitute was further replicated when liberated for a 3-month period by a group of Glasgow students in 1950. History may well have been made today, but should we not be questioning its very foundations? The Guardian, Thursday, 14th of November 1996. No, of course not. There's no one who knows the whereabouts of the real stone. But John had done what he could. He knew, as I knew, that it was now the turn of others who can perhaps bear the truth and convince the Scottish people that it is time to stop languishing under British rule through ignorance and an inability to believe in our true power and heritage.